It's not perfect. So the goal here is to get these to look at least as decent as this one, hopefully a little better. As you can clearly see, the protruding part of the repair there. Didn't sand it down quite close enough, but I am very happy. It's smooth, and I'm also very happy that the texture matches the original vinyl like crazy good. So if I had just sanded this down a little smoother, I think I might have a winner here. Because that crack was pretty rough to begin with. And I know it looks bad in certain light, but in other light, you can't really see it at all. And so it's going to depend on how you're using the car, what time of day you're driving, whatever. But that looks a lot better than how I started. It looks a lot better than, the Nile and the Amazon over here. So here's what I did in a nutshell. So what I'm going to do here is the same thing I did on that side. The very first thing I did was take your rotary tool of whatever flavor, and I got that little conical grinding stone on there, and then you're gonna have to at least grind these to where they're level, because all these cracks are gonna be raised up against the surface of the rest of the dashboard, and you can feel it. I don't know if you can see it, but you can definitely feel that they're raised. So you've got to grind those down flat. You want to grind out a little bit of the foam in here that's like this car has collected 53 years of country road dust in there. None of it's going to look that great, but at least clear off the first layer there. You get that flattened down, you get that cleaned out a little bit, and then here's what I did. I'm going to try it again on this side. I'm using the SEM 39767 mix. It's supposed to come with a fancy pants gun that I don't have, like a caulking gun, to where this fits in the gun, and you have a trigger here you squeeze and it pushes both of these pistons in at the same time. I don't have that. I'm just taking a big old screwdriver and I'm pushing a little bit of each part of the, the epoxy mix or whatever. They both come out of their own side up here. They each have their little tube hole. And I squeezed it into just a solo cup. Here, I put a little bit of the white stuff that comes out here and then the black stuff here. Mix it up. And once you mix it up, you got less than 5 minutes. Well, it says 5 minutes. You have, I'd say, less than 5 minutes when you're doing it this way to actually get it into where you need it. And that crack over on that side was so big, I ended up just pouring it in there. And quickly, I took one of these plastic tools you get at Harbor Freight. I took this and just smoothed it out real quick. And by the time you get that done, and the time I've been talking to you, that stuff is starting to get hot and react to each element in there, and it's starting to set. And you will see it. It gets super sticky, super fast, and there's no more messing with it. You just got to let it be. Once that stuff sets, which doesn't take very long, it'll get really hot. Let it cool down, and then I ended up taking a belt sander to it because it kind of globbed up that little river there. I took a belt sander to it, got it down as close to the dash as I dared, and then I took a drill with, I actually think this is for a die grinder, a sanding kit for a die grinder, but I put it in here, and I don't know what grit this is, but it's fairly rough. And I took this and just used this to shape down on that side over where I showed you. You just get in there and you just kind of shape it the way you need it. And then when I got it as close as I could get it, then I took a 400 sanding block and tried to even it out, looking for high spots and such. You get it as close as you think. Like, this is a driver car. I'm not ready to spend 400 plus on a dashboard. I just want it to look better. I put some Rust-Oleum primer over the repair part, and then prepped that with one of those one of the gray scrubby pads. Just kind of scuffed it up a little bit, cleaned it up with a tack rag, hit it with plastic adhesion promoter, and then the Dupli-Color, this is flat black. And so that's what you see over here. I don't have it clear coated yet because I'm going to do it all at one time, but that's the process that got me to there. So I'm going to see if I can do a little better on this side, but even if I can't, that's still better than this. We're getting somewhere. Very fragile. 53-year-old stuff. Here, obviously I have a problem. This is pretty wicked here. And I think what I'm going to wind up doing is probably taking a piece of tape and taping off these first 4 rows of holes, maybe. Yeah, I'll try to do these 4, put a piece of blue tape over it right here to the corner of it and preserve these holes. And then this, I'm probably just going to have to cut this out. I can smooth these over, but this I'm just going to have to cut out and then work on this and just fill all of that in with that SEM plastic repair stuff. So this speaker grill here will be half, but it doesn't matter. I don't have speakers there anyway. And this is a, like I said, not a full restoration, obviously. So I think that's what I'm going to try. And that way, the only other option really is to just put the plastic stuff over this whole thing, which, I don't know, that might not be a bad option either. And then you could just sand the whole thing down flat and just go for it. That might be what I wind up doing. You'd still have these 2 over here, most of this one, all of this one. Which I don't know, it doesn't look bad, really. Well, I can try that first. I'll try and save these 4 rows. If I don't like it, if it doesn't work or whatever, then we'll just come back in and put a little skimmer on top of there, and then I'll just sand it all down. Leave that in there as something for that stuff to grab onto, since there's nothing underneath this, clearly. All right, I'll work on that. Okay, I've got it all masked off. I'm gonna do this side first, and basically as soon as I get the stuff on there, you got a little pull tabs ready. I'm gonna just pull this off because that stuff, once it sets at all, it's not gonna run anywhere. I'm gonna try to push this down and get that to sit so I can shape that to where it matches the rest of the grill that I'm gonna try to save. We'll see. And then we'll do this crack first. We're going to have some overlap down here, which is fine. Take off this tape, and then I'll mix up some more and do this one over here. That's the plan. And squish out an equivalent amount of the gray stuff on the other side. If you notice, if you can see it, I'm using a big pipe here because these little pistons in the bottom of this, they can turn over sideways in that tube and make a giant mess. Ask me how I know. And then you got to fish them out with a pair of needle nose or something and try not to get super mad. So now they're pretty inert. As soon as you start mixing, the timer starts, and it doesn't take very long. So as soon as I kind of get a uniform color there, still kind of soupy, you gotta run with it, or you won't be able to run with it. So I'll get down here in front. So that will take push down as much as you can. I'm gonna use the cup because I like cups there. So I'm just gonna push it up, keep it from going through from below. And it's starting to heat up now. Yep, there we go. I think what I'm gonna do here on the next go around, I'm going to put a piece of blue tape on this down here underneath this where I'm covering up these holes anyway to keep it from leaking through, because I had some drop down there that I did not notice. So I think that's what I'll do. Tape that over. It's okay. Little decline here, so I should be able to fill this in, no problem. Fill all that in. I got blue tape under it, and then we'll try to fill in this little valley here. Okay. This stuff comes with a nozzle type thing that will mix all this for you as it's coming out of the nozzle. It's kind of slick. It's just that for what I'm trying to do here, I did not want to use it that way. Lack of a better word, I guess, or lack of a better way to explain it. I'll show you the nozzles here as soon as I get this set how I want it. Okay, that looks pretty decent, although this could be a little bit more level, and I think that would help things. Like here, I'm going to have a low spot. It's almost too late to screw with it. And I know that because I can feel it heating up. And I'm not as concerned, like I know you can see it though. The little holes there, you know, they've filled in and sunken down, but I'm more concerned about getting this part level. It's not too late. I'll try to lift up my tape here. Okay, that came off of the stick pretty easy. So I'll see what I can get by lifting up the tape. Yeah. You're just going to have to mess with. But at least here you can see if you want to mess with it this way or not. Yeah, see, it's already hardened up to the point where there's no more shape in it. It's hot. Woo, boy, that's hot. And you can see I've got a heck of a ridge here, so that's going to be fun to deal with. Even down here, that globbed up more than I thought it was gonna. I'm gonna let this harden probably. The last time I let it set, you know, about 20 minutes or so. And while it was hard, it was still also kind of soft. Like if you've messed with paint at all, you know, like, yeah, sure, it may be dry to the touch after, you know, X amount of hours, but it's not truly cured, hardened, done, or whatever for days. You know, that paint will be soft for a long time. And that's how this stuff was, probably about a day. Well, I wish I knew. Actually, I do have, I can tell you how hot that is. The dash pad itself is 78. That's 128 degrees. I knew it was hot, and it's cooling down now, obviously. I wonder what it got at the peak. It's 138 there. Anyway, like anything you're trying to sand, if it's still a little bit soft, it's harder to deal with. It really needs to be hard in order to get your abrasives to do what you need them to do. Otherwise, they just get gummed up. But right now, I'm just going to leave that, and I'm going to mix up some more. And the same thing here. I'll just pour that in, and I think I will go ahead with the tape removal. Like as soon as you get done pouring it. Oh yeah, it's hot. As soon as you get done pouring it, I'm going to peel that off, because trust me, trying to get that tape out of there when that stuff has fully cured was really no fun down on that end. I got it, but it just seemed like it was maybe a little better way to do it here. If I didn't mention, God, this stuff smells. Oh, it stinks so bad. This may not have mixed strong enough. May not have. I think it's enough of it. Do you want to crack? Just. Oh, shut up. Mistake. Shoot. I'm going to let this sit up for basically a whole day. I'm not going to touch it. And then I'm going to take, probably again, start with the belt sander and start sanding that stuff down. This is the mixing dispensing tube that comes with that SEM kit. And you can see in here the little different chambers. This screws on to this piece where I was just pushing it out and mixing it by hand. This would screw onto here. And then if you have the gun, as you squeeze, just like a caulking gun, it would squeeze both things out at the same time. They would come into each of their chambers there, and they start mixing through as you push them, as you push it out to the tip, the applicator tip, and you could just fill in that kind of way. I didn't have the gun, so I didn't do that. And I thought about trying to do that with, you know, some homemade deal. I don't know. This worked for me. Works good enough for what I'm doing. But that's how that's supposed to work. Maybe there's a little better shot of how that mixes in there. It's been a couple days since I put this stuff on there, so it's pretty hard now. Still flexible, but hard. And trust me, it sands a lot better if you let it wait a couple days. So we're pretty smooth across here. I'm going to shape this a little bit with that drill attachment. Sanding that stuff sure does make a mess. So after using the belt sander and then the drill attachment and then basically finishing this up with a piece of 220, I've got it right here especially is really smooth. And then when you get down in the speaker grill, less so, and you can see here where I've got some holes. I don't really care. Again, the only other alternative here is buying a whole new dash pad, and I'm not ready to do that yet. I just want to make this look better. So I got a hole here, I got a low spot here, I got one here. By the time I'm going to get this primered and we get that trunk spatter on there, it's going to mask a lot of that, get the color on there and clear coat, and then throw it back in the car. Pretty well done. Like any other type of filler or body work or whatever, the more time you take to make this smooth and to get your contours right, the better the overall product's going to be. How is this all going to look compared next to it? I don't know. I don't really care. I wish I had taken the time to sand this down a little smoother over here. Really happy with the texture that I got and the color. Just, it's not as smooth, so I'm going to try to do this a little better, or I have tried to do it a little better. So now I'm going to primer it, put some spatter paint on it, let that sit for 3 or 4 days so that spatter can get as dried out as it's going to get before I sand it. You sand that stuff too early, it just rolls right off. I'm going to use my 400 block, my squishy block here, to sand down the spatter and paint it and call it good. All right, primed, dried, and I've got it sanded with some of the gray scrubbies, sanded, cleaned up with a gray scrubby. So you can see a little bit of the imperfections on there still. For you, this may not work. For me, it's fine. I took more time on these than I did on the passenger side, with the exception of the holes in it. It looks better. But let's throw some spatter paint on there and just see what gives. Okay, and here we are after 2 medium-ish coats of this stuff. I went just a tad heavier than I did on the passenger side. Just because this stuff, even when it's dry, is real easy to roll off with sandpaper. So, and now you can see why I wasn't really super worried about some of those spots in there. Hopefully they'll not be so visible once I get it sanded and painted. And if they are, again, this is my car, you do what you want. So we're going to let that dry for probably 3 or 4 days. Make sure it's totally dry. This stuff is water soluble, so don't get it wet, don't wet sand it, anything like that. Just take it easy with that 400 grit block, and we're almost done. It's been a couple of days since I put the spatter paint down, and I know I didn't show it, but I did just get finished sanding this down and getting the texture to where I want it to be. And it's not, at least what I'm doing is not super complicated. I take a gray scrubby first, and I go, because you're going to have little spatters all over here too. I take this and I knock down all that stuff all over it first to get off the loose pieces. Then I take this 400 block. You got to be kind of careful with this because this is still a little bit stiffer than I'd like it to be. It can be pretty aggressive. And you just work this over and get it, really starting to flatten down with that. You got to be careful, of course, on the edges, like everything else with paint. It'll take that texture right off. But with the spatter paint, it's almost, I don't know, it's almost still soft even after it's dried for a couple days. And you start to kind of like, it flattens down, but it kind of squishes out. And as you're sanding it off, it kind of comes off like an eraser on the top of a pencil. Okay, so you just keep doing that. And once you get it down, you just got to keep feeling the original and then feel this. Once you get it down to a certain level where you're like, all right, I think we're close, then I take the 800 and then I really kind of get it down. With this especially, you can get into the recesses and some of the dips and things like that around the corners where you can't really with that sanding block. And you'll know, when you get a finish that fairly well matches the original, and you'll obviously, you're going to be able to tell when it's done, but not that much, because you can see the seam, but you can't really see from the original finish to the spatter paint because that's all over here. So once you get it down to where you can't really feel too much of a difference, stop. It's real easy to, go a little too far, especially here on edges and things, and peel your spatter right off. As I'm moving my hand across, I just try to feel for the transition. Is it fairly smooth? I actually can do a little work right here. But here feels really good. And then I'm just gonna, don't use any cleaners or preps or anything like that. I'm just gonna tack cloth it off and then put the color on there and gloss coat it. And this time when I do it, I'm gonna go ahead and color the whole thing. I'm actually debating sanding this back down a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to do it actually. So I'll probably just take my 800 there and just 800 the rest of it, put color on the whole thing, and call it good. Now you get a little better vantage point. This side turned out really well. Of course, I had my process down a little better with the spatter paint by that point. And to be fair, this was a bigger crack when I first started out. But when you're sitting here in the car, you don't see the top, and it looks really good. So much better. Here I had to make a little thing to hold my side down. This side turned out really nice. Even with blocking off with that half of the speaker grill, I think it's better than what it looked like before. And then I had the texture down here pretty well. And then a nice coat of paint of the plastic paint you get from Dupli-Color. This is flat black or satin or whatever they call it. And at certain angles, this one over here doesn't look great. There you can kind of see, yeah. I didn't have that sanded down quite as much as the other side. And you can also see that patch there, but this crack was a lot bigger than the ones on the other side. So when you step back and you look at, like, you're not going to see that top really as you're sitting in the car, and it's hard to see it from the outside because of the sun glare. So just a little bit of work, sanding, filling cracks, that trunk paint, little flat black goes a long ways, because I did all of this except for that vent over there. And I think it looks pretty good. A lot better than it was. A lot better than it was. Up all the time was all of these holes in the dash that the screws are supposed to go into. They were all stripped out. So what I did was I took a tube of liquid nails and I shot it into those stripped out holes in that dash pad. I waited about 12 hours and then set the dash pad on here and then ran some screws up in there. It was still a little gooey, but so it kind of had the hole formed, and then after about a day I ran the screws in there and it actually worked. So just another little tip that might help you out.